because if some federal motherfucker comes through the door, I say, hey, it's all in the game. But a city police? Baltimore City? Hell no, can't be happening. Because I know I have raised too much goddamn money for the mayor and his ticket. Hell no, ain't no soul in the world that fucking ungrateful.
Yeah, well, calm down, Clay, huh?
Money laundering? They gonna come talk to me about money laundering in West Baltimore? Shit, where do y'all think I'm gonna raise cash for the whole damn ticket?
Alex Cottrell and Toby Huntingford present Caught on the Wire. This podcast is an episode-by-episode analysis of HBO's widely acclaimed TV series about the city of Baltimore, its people, and its many problems. Find more information about the show and all the episodes online at caughtonthewire.wordpress.com.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Toby. I'm here with Alex. We're on Caught on the Wire, Season 4, Episode 2, Soft Eyes. How has the week been for you, Alex? Or the 2 weeks? We've been on one of our off periods again, I'm afraid.
Yeah, we did have a summer break, essentially.
Our boys of summer break.
Yeah, exactly.
Not too neatly. We should have gone probably before Season 4 started, but I think we were a little bit too eager to jump straight into the best season.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But enough time to catch up on various things. And have you seen Show Me a Hero?
Yes, actually.
First two episodes are out, aren't they?
First four episodes are out. They're doing two a week. So there's only 1 week left of Show Me a Hero.
Oh, right. I didn't realise the second one's come out yet.
Yeah, no, they're doing 6 episode season with 2 episodes a week. So we've already had 2/3 of the show come past us. I've seen the first 2. I saw them yesterday. Same, which I was very, very surprised. Well, not surprised. I was very pleased. I think it's again very, very Wire, or certainly very David Simon. Very, very political. Very focused on it's focusing on a very kind of specific issue. I think, which is it's very interesting to look at and kind of crazy how people reacted to it and sort of how removed it is from the world we live in today. But I think it's an interesting issue that.
Or is it?
That was. Yeah, it depends. It certainly depends on how you look at it. Yeah, I mean, are you enjoying it, Alex?
Yeah, I think it's a really intriguing show. It's a very slow burner, which is to be expected from a show of that style. It introduces an awful lot of characters very quickly and really tries to portray, in the same way as The Wire, it's trying to portray a whole city. It's trying to really capture the feel of the city of Yonkers, and I think Oscar Isaac is really good.
Yeah.
I think that he does a good job of portraying an interesting character when there are, quite long scenes with lots of sort of long dialogue between, not so many characters, and it holds up really nicely, I think. It's got a lot of Wire techniques in it as well, like in the first episode where they're taking photos from the helicopter. There's that sort of black and white snapshot as the photo is taken that obviously very, just reminded me instantly of The Wire. The very first episode
definitely.
of The Wire as well.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I thought the first 10 minutes were really un-David Simon. There was the non-diegetic music kind of threw me off a little bit. Felt really weird in the context of the show. And then there was also obviously the big scene-setting helicopter ride with some New York City porn for everyone to enjoy, which didn't feel very David Simon at all, but I really appreciated it. I thought it was a really nice way to get everyone into it and to establish how close Yonkers is to the Big Apple. It's just kind of on top of it. And yeah, it was certainly a really, really nice introduction.
Cleverly written, very involved.
Yeah,
I really like the bit where he receives the bullet in the mail, and he pulls his gun out from his like ankle holster and pulls a bullet out of his gun and puts it next to him. He's like, "Mine's bigger." I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's got lots of memorable lines in it, and like I say, which is good for a show that is very very talky and very involved with a lot of politics and So but I've not really had any difficulty following it at all. I think it's been really well put together, and I guess it lacks any of that high drama. I think the most action-packed bit so far is maybe where that guy was running away from the police and he has like an asthma attack. That's probably the most dramatic bit so far, except for maybe like the council house, not council house. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
council building, whatever it is.
The scenes with Judge Sand, I think his name, isn't it, when he's putting down the big stakes for their housing project
and the courthouse, and the courthouse bit. There's not really it's not really
so,
like action. It's just kind of high drama.
No, it's certainly very focused drama. And you say it's slow burn. I mean, it's slow burn as far as this kind of getting into it goes, but the actual movement of the story is very quick. Like Oscar Isaac goes from not knowing this woman to going out with her to marrying. Well, is he? I'm not sure they're married, but they're certainly very deep into a long-term relationship. So it really flies through the years from I think 1987 to 1994 over the course of 6 episodes, as we'll see. So certainly that aspect of it is certainly more of a snapshot and diving in and out of a history timeline.
Although when I say that it's a slow burner, I mean more in it's not. It's strange, although you're right. It's strange in the first episode because he becomes like the mayor in the very first episode, and that did stick out as something that moved very quickly. But I think
it reminded me of how great Carcetti's rise was in comparison.
Yeah,
but yeah, I know what you mean.
But it's interesting that it is introducing it to a lot of characters, and we're not spending a lot of time with sort of individual people. We're kind of getting to know quite a few characters at once. So in that sense, it's like building up people's lives and the city quite slowly. It's not in a hurry to show us big action or big events per se, except for maybe the first episode where he does become mayor.
Yeah,
but it's
I suppose
it's got these like flash points, but it's not really. It's more talky than actiony, obviously, because it's on that kind of style.
I certainly sense there'll be some big payoff in the last couple of episodes, but for the time being, there's, as you say, a lot of setup, a lot of talking. And kind of micro events rather than really big, memorable ones.
Really good sound, by the way. It sounds excellent.
It's
There's
really dense,
where
isn't it?
they're in I think they're in one of the like project houses, and they're just having it's like a pretty normal conversation. But there was like music going on in the background as if it's like coming from the flat above them or below them or something. And it was really well done that I thought it was actually like next door or something playing music. I was like, what's that noise? Like I muted it and I was like, oh, it's the TV show.
Yeah.
It's really nicely done.
That was something that they built on from The Wire as well, because The Wire was obviously
beautiful soundscapes.
In terms of not having to worry about music, you then have to kind of perhaps put that effort into really, building the soundscape and making sure that there's lots and lots of ambient noise in the background.
We're going to be getting into some John Cage territory here if we see, noise is music.
Noise is music.
But yeah.
Not anymore, because there certainly is there's a few montages here and there, isn't there, in Show Me a Hero?
Yeah.
Which we do know David Simon does enjoy. But he only uses them quite sparingly in The Wire. So I'm sure we'll see more of what's to come from that show. But yeah, so far very promising. And certainly more enjoyable than I found Treme in the first episode.
Yeah. Actually made me really want to watch the second episode.
Yeah, it was just, there's a sort of, it felt like the issue sort of had more stakes to it, and there was more to watch, more to get invested in.
Right, shall we take a look in Listener's Corner, seeing as it has been 2 weeks? I'm sure we've got a couple of bits and pieces to look at.
We have 3 of our loyal listeners got involved. Damon's got involved just after we recorded our last episode. That was the 12th of August, actually. And he mentioned that Season 3's overall theme was reform. And unless he's missing someone, Cutty's reform attempt is the only successful one. So I think that's probably Damon chiming in about our season overall discussion at the end of the Season 3, Episode 12 podcast, just to give his take on it. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I guess you could say McNulty perhaps had a successful reform attempt, although his wasn't one of the real reform pillars of the season. I guess it's more of one that you could interpret as your own. But yeah.
I suppose Carcetti had some success in reforming himself from the councilman to the would-be man who would be mayor. That was a pretty successful kind of transition, although he obviously didn't succeed in the sense that he he doesn't get there because obviously season ends before that happens. So.
Yeah, and we don't see a lot of that change as well. There's so much of what's happened to Carcetti has been between seasons, and it's been us catching up with how he's moved on. So, in terms of the end of season 3, it doesn't really feel perhaps like he's gone through that same reform as the other characters have.
It's certainly not a success. No, it's just
no.
It's not a success in terms of like his goals. It's more like it's a success in terms of him going from the councilman to that having that drive and that position where it feels like this is the man who would be mayor. Like, whereas before we just see him as a plucky councilman.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not a success in terms of his goals because he doesn't quite go that far. And Cutty, like you say, really does find his place, which is what he's been doing for the whole season. And eventually he finds himself in a position where it's rewarding and he can give back and he feels like his life has purpose again. And he's not just strolling along and doing everything based on money and whatnot.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Okay, so that was Damon. Thanks for getting in touch. We next heard from Dan, and we heard from him last Thursday, actually. A bit of a longer correspondence this time, so Dan's really looking forward to the Season 4 analysis. Such a strong season, and I'm glad you spent a bit of time talking about the youngsters' acting abilities. They really are incredible, and I think they had to fill the void left by Stringer, Avon, and to some extent McNulty, makes their performances even more impressive. I've always loved the Boys of Summer episode and title. It really is the last days of these kids' innocence. The way Michael forgets the piss balloons incident come Season 5 really shows how far their lives have spiraled away, as we touched on. A couple of thoughts. You did mention this, but I really love how the show brings back Fruit for just a small part in this opening episode and then has him killed. I've always wondered how the negotiations with the actors must go for scenarios like this, but what it does is really help to bring this world to life in a natural, authentic way. The discussion about which of the 4 Boys of Summer are your favourite is an interesting one. I think mine was always Randy initially, although Michael's arc in Season 5 probably helps to elevate him as the most memorable overall. However, on rewatches I think I'm one of the few that really likes Namond and how his character develops. His father has one of the most fearsome reputations from his days as a Barksdale enforcer, whilst his mother is greedy, demanding and generally reprehensible. Namond's conflict between who he is naturally and what he's expected to be makes him a fascinating character, and I think whilst his aggressive front can be construed as irritating or arrogant, there's also a tragic hopelessness too. Someone stuck in the middle of a game that he shouldn't be forced to play in the first place, just like the other 3. Unlike the other 3, of course, Namond finds a way out, but I don't think he's undeserving of this chance at a new life. I've heard a lot of people say it's unfair that he made it out of the game whilst Randy, Michael and Dookie were left behind. I'm not necessarily of the opinion that he's my favourite, but he's definitely up there in my estimations. In fact, picking a favourite is perhaps impossible for me. They all have memorable moments, be it entertaining or ultimately tragic. And one last thing. You guys may have already picked up on this. Each of the opening 4 episodes ends with a shot of one of the 4 Boys of Summer. This opening is Randy, of course, and in episode 2 it's Namond. And I like how this season is straight away introducing each of their personalities and developing their arcs in a meaningful way, punctuated at the end of these opening 4 episodes. Looking forward to the next episode as ever. So there's a very long letter from Dan, but I thought it was certainly very worth reading it out because we were having a long discussion last time about the 4 kids, and we did want to hear your views on them. And it's certainly nice to hear some support for Namond because I don't hear many people really repping him as one of the big 4.
That's true. Certainly from the first episode as well, because he has a very immediately obnoxious attitude, whereas the other boys seem to carry themselves in a much more endearing manner. But eventually, over the course of the series, especially as you're rewatching The Wire, you understand the kind of strange paradox of Namond and how he is a product of his environment and how he is capable, in the same way that someone like, say, D'Angelo was, he's a product of his environment, and he is capable of great empathy, and he really is not built for the brutality, and that everything he ends up doing ends up as a bit of a facade. I mean, that wasn't so much of a thing with D'Angelo, whereas Namond does feel the need, especially as a child, to save face amongst his friends and to constantly be the one who's instigating some kind of fight, but when it comes down to it, he's not actually capable. It's that kind of trait that he's got going on, so it allows you to understand it as time goes on, and he ends up being the most successful kid in the end. ends up kind of in a very beneficial position indeed.
Yeah.
He's very fortunate to have been taken under the wing of someone like Colvin, who made the effort to try and really school him, do the kind of schooling that Namor naturally could respond to, as opposed to the classroom style schooling, which meant nothing to him.
Yeah, very, very good points.
So yeah, there's great value in Naaman's character, and it's great analysis from Dan about the value in his character, and also about the opening of the 4 episodes ending with a shot of one of the 4 boys, which I hadn't noticed. So that's a good spot.
No, yep, completely. Me neither. And thinking back on it now, it's true that the very last scene sort of gives that big eye-opener that we've been waiting for each character. So obviously we learned the most about Randy last time. We learn a big amount about Naaman with his mum and dad this episode. I believe Dookie is in the 3rd one with the fan as he's fanning down the girl who gets slashed in the classroom.
Oh, yeah.
And then in the 4th one we see Michael as he refuses a lift home with Cutty after a boxing match.
That's right, yeah.
So it's certainly, a big look into what makes them tick in each of those situations.
I've always tried to stop myself from being like too fanatical or sycophantic about the show whilst we're doing the podcast, but it's so hard to restrain myself in season 4. Like, it just hits you immediately. These amazing themes and just the kids and these incredible performances. Like, it really is, like, personally, again, I'm kind of making this statement right from the beginning rather than wait until the end, but it really is the standout season for me personally. It really is my favourite.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that for me, certainly. And should we hear from Matt finally?
Yeah, let's move on to the next letter. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Matt's favourite season is 4 as well, but he is chiming in about the end of season 3. He's just got back from holiday where he had time to catch up on the last 3 episodes of the podcast. He noticed that we missed something in season 3, episode 12. I'm not being critical, I just thought you would dig this connection. As you mentioned, when Rules shuts down Amsterdam, he's playing Flight of the Valkyries. At around 2 minutes 19, you hear the helicopter pilot say, "Outstanding, Red Team, outstanding." Get you a case of beer for that one. That line with that music comes from the famous helicopter scene in Apocalypse Now, which he's linked over to us. If you know the film, you will see the similarities between Kilgore and Rules. Rules is obviously trying to play the part of Kilgore by playing that music when he starts the Amsterdam shutdown operation. Loving the podcast and can't wait for the next episode. Regards, Matt with the Omar cat.
Yeah, that's a really good spot. That it's like a homage, I suppose. Nice little homage on the part of the wire.
Yeah, no, definitely. So yeah, really appreciate when you guys catch those things that we don't. We really want the podcast to be as comprehensive as possible and sort of leave no stone unturned in terms of analysis and hidden meanings and subtext. So the more you can add, the better. So yeah, thanks very much, guys. Listener's Corner is healthy as ever, and we'll now move on to our recap. I'll pass over to you, Alex, for this week.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say at the end of Listener's Corner to make something aphoristic about it. We're better together, I guess, in terms of making the podcast complete. That's why we encourage the discussion, because we like hearing other people's sort of thoughts, but also for people who listen to the wire, listen to the podcast even, irrespective of whether or not they contribute at all, or whether they message in, they are hearing all this extra information as a result of what you guys are adding as well. So that's why we really appreciate any emails. Great stuff there. So yeah, just emphasising that, guys. Really.
No, definitely very worthy. All right. Okay, so did you manage to whittle it down into a few sections this week?
Yeah,
or are we in for a mammoth?
It's really spread it out, isn't it? There's so many things to cover, but I've put it together as much as I can. There's some quite big sections in this because there's individual parts that are investigated quite a bit, so we can talk about them in large sections and try to cut it down as much as possible. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 major sections, or major strands, I suppose I should say. We have homicide, we have the politics, we have the neighbourhood kids, we have the Stanfield organisation, spend a very short time with them, major case unit, Cutty, a short bit with Bubbles, and then what's going on at the school.
Okay.
So let's start off. And I'm going to begin with homicide this week, just because it's easiest to put this together and then have all the politics right at the right in one section rather than being broken up. So, Bunk continues his search for Lex as a suspect in the murder of Fruit. He visits Lex's parents at their home and pressurizes his mother about her son's whereabouts. She tells him she doesn't know where he is. At the homicide unit, Bunk discusses the interview with Lex's parents with his colleagues Ed Norris and Vernon Holly. Then a call comes in with a new case, and Holly debates whether or not to answer, believing that if Norris takes the call, it will be a simple case, whereas if he answers the call, the case will be impossible. In the end, Norris answers, and the case appears to be a difficult drug shooting. Holly ends up accompanying Norris to the scene of the shooting, where they learn from the first officer on the scene, Aaron Castor, that the victim was alive when found but did not identify the shooter, instead telling Castor that he was shot by a guy with a gun. Later, Norris learns that his victim was a witness in a drug case, and is pleased that the case will be high profile and garner him overtime work. And he discusses the case with Sergeant Landsman and is ordered to downplay the witness angle, but take as much overtime as he needs to break the case. As soon as Norris leaves his office, Landsman phones Valchek to tell him about the dead witness. So, just bundling it all together there, first two parts, we've got Bunk continuing the investigation on Lex and his whereabouts, and then we have Norris picking up the case and the discovery of this dead witness, which starts a whole other thing going on for the political angle. But here we are in its very early stages. What did you think of Bunk in these short scenes where he's with Lex's parents? He's always had a way of changing people's minds. He's always been quite a persuasive fellow. Do you think he kind of goes too far here? I guess he doesn't know what's going on, but he does seem to lay it on a little thick here to this grieving mother. Yeah,
it's tricky.
I mean, you can tell that she pretty much knows. You know, she knows that her son is
Lex
probably
is
dead, and that there's no way she's going to say anything because something will happen to her next.
I really do like the actress here, though, because the way Bunk describes it later, that something was different about this, and she felt weird, and you certainly could see on her face that it was less mourning, but more fear of snitching and what would happen with Marlo on the street.
Well, I guess it was a mixture of both. I mean, she's pretty much, being denied the right to properly grieve, I suppose. She can't go overboard with it, because otherwise she's going to get found out. It's going to be obvious, So she's been denied the right to really kind of explore those kind of emotions and let them out, and in the way that she might like. So I'm sure it does come across as a very difficult scene. I think it's well acted by this lady, who obviously we only see in this scene. So she does a damn good job for one scene.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we see quite a few of these scenes. They're one of the Wire's more procedural police-style scenes where we see Bunk going through the investigative motions. This one is perhaps a little bit more on the extreme side than the others. I think Tosh's... there's a scene where he talks to Tosh's parents, which is fairly similar. It's a case of, okay, mourning needs to occur, but I also need to find my murderer, so you're going to try and help me as the closest contact. And it can't be an easy situation for Bunk, but he always does a very good job of tugging on certain strings to try and release the information. But obviously there's a code that these people live by on the streets, and it very, very rarely works. So it's just another one of those dead-end scenes, really, seeing him going through the motions. And there really is a sense that Marlo's rep is so fierce that she wouldn't dare snitch here. And Bunk's got to find another way around.
And then this takes us to the homicide unit, where he ends up talking to Norris and Holly, and that leads us into Norris's case. Now, I understand that this bit here, where they're talking about whether or not to take the case, because if he picks it up, it'll be impossible or whatever. I understand that this is pretty much a scene from Homicide.
Okay, yeah, sure.
I think that this is pretty much taken from a scene in the book.
Okay, no, certainly I wasn't too aware of that, but what I do like about this segment of scenes is, again, it's something that the show does on a few occasions. It tries to help us understand the major day-to-day stresses of this job, and one of the big kind of dilemmas is Do I pick up the case? Do I not? And it's the rotation system, the stresses of the rotation system. So it's really quite interesting and feels very characteristic of the show. The show's irony when the start description of a fresh murder sends Vernon and Bunk into stitches of laughter. You can totally see why it's happening, but at the same time, it feels very dark and kind of uncalled for. So that was really nice to see.
I mean, we've mentioned before how the desensitization to the world and the violence and the brutality is obviously a major track throughout the show, and we see, especially amongst the police, of course, that it ends up being a necessary part of their job for them in order to cope with all of the horrible things they're seeing on a daily basis, is that it actually, in the spirit of the game, becomes a laugh.
Yeah. And I love the way Bunk sort of underlines it with better to be lucky than to be good. Which I think is a really nice line, actually, which sort of goes unnoticed right at the end of the scene, and really applies to a few elements of the wider show and this episode, notably Herc and Royce. Their relationship this episode certainly is explained by that, as well as the $200 handouts that go on the street. So yeah, really cool. And so then we go through a strange up and down with Vern and Holly having, of course, the high ground at this point, having avoided picking up a tough one. Then it switches. It turns out to be I guess, I don't know what the term is a bullseye case where you just sort of get it straight in the hole. And then, of course, all of a sudden, Landsman turns it back into a very difficult case, and Vernon's all of a sudden got the high ground again. So it goes through a strange little pattern there. And I mean, what did you think of the crime scene? There was obviously Aaron Carster was the first reporting officer. We saw this guy pointing up instead of north at the start of season 3, when he was clearly a trainee. I'm not sure he's gotten much better at things here. There's a sense that he hasn't quite done all the work he needs to kind of give the detectives a good start, or at least starting point for their investigation. And there's nothing for them to salvage.
But I guess it seems that he's also making a point that, I don't know, maybe it's hard for us to say. We can only really speculate, maybe he wasn't asking the right questions or whatever. But it feels like he also might be making a point in the same way about the BNBG thing with Krawcheck, is that when people are in that position of distress or whatever, we kind of assume that they must be being logical. So if you ask them who shot them, they must know the answer, or they'll be able to give the answer, or they'll be able to give an impressive description. Whereas normally when people are in that level of distress, they give out silly answers like that because their body's trying to process a load of other factors and chemicals and adrenaline and sort of thoughts and fear. And so I guess it's kind of part of the fact that maybe you expect to get these logical responses from people so that it happens at the end, whereas in reality it's not like that. We all know the trope of some guy's about to die and he's like, "Who shot you, Johnny?" It was this guy. The Wire is trying to subvert that and be like, well, no, it's not really like that. It's more like they just say it was a guy with a gun because that's about all they're capable of at the time. So I kind of like that. But you're right, it doesn't cast a particularly good light, or no pun intended, it doesn't cast a particularly good light on Caster because, is it Caster? I'm not sure. Because he just comes across as a bit gormless and very sort of just man on the beat, just doing his job, getting his paycheck.
Yeah, certainly both arguments I think would work there, and as we mentioned before, the tides then very quickly turn, and in typical Wire style, the gloater is sort of knocked off their pedestal, and Landsman says to Norris, we know why the case has been solved, we know what the reason was behind the shooting, but I want you to use other investigative methods in the meantime while we bury the witness angle, and you can take all the OT you need to do that. But for the time being, you've got to, save face and be political about it. So we see Landsman's a very competent middle manager, and certainly very aware of the politics that's going on around him, and doesn't want to upset Rules, who I still think of Rules as Landsman's boss because they're such an interesting duo together. But I really assume that Rules is far, far above Landsman now. So I'm not too sure who he's reporting to. But we see that Landsman does spread that message onto Valchek. Not that the scene ever appears to us, but it's obviously something we can infer when we see Valchek go to Carcetti later on.
Yeah, it's a good point about Landsman being a good management guy, and it does somewhat glaze over the fact that he is intentionally making this case go slower, just purely for the sake of the politics. And again, The Wire is capable of being quite nonchalant about something very controversial. It doesn't feel the need for people to go, "What? But you're doing this, that, and the other." It doesn't have to have someone there saying to point it out for the audience. It's there for us to kind of go, "Oh, well, that just happened," and then you realise later on, you're like, "Hang on a minute, that's actually pretty despicable, really."
And it was written on both Landsman and Norris's faces for a good 2 or 3 seconds.
But they know they've done it so many times before that they
yeah.
just accept that it's part of the job, and that's why it's so well presented. It's not, it's showing this the reality of the job, and like you say, Landsman does well to realise what's going on around him. He's not just like some idiot sitting in his desk and bossing people around every now and again. He's a really smart guy. He's obviously a good detective, as he's proven before, and again. He's clued into the political game, and it feels like if he were to advance, it's not really clear if he has any desires for promotion. That's never really discussed. But it feels like if he did, he would be quite competent at it.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. So, the one thing I was wondering is there a previous interaction which explains this favour that Landsman does for Valchek, or is it generally just demonstrating the theme of Landsman the theme of Valchek never letting a favour go uncompensated? I wasn't too sure if there was some sort of story link up there, because that would have been very, very pretty if it was.
I can't remember off the top of my head. We may have to turn to our listeners.
Yeah.
Anybody pick? Are we missing something here? It's possible. I feel like it's something that might bury away, and I don't know if there's been a previous favour to make this the case, but. Certainly, it just demonstrates this culture of favours.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I could possibly consider is Valchek being annoyed with rules in season 2 because his Sobotka detail didn't follow Sobotka as much as he'd want to. But that's certainly a tenuous link. That's 2 or 3 years back in terms of the show's chronology. So, I don't know. Maybe there's a much more obvious link that we're missing, but...
Someone will have to correct us via email.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so that's Homicide down?
Yeah, that's...
What do we got next?
That's Homicide, yeah, that's done. Let's move on to Politics, which is a slightly larger section, and will actually take us along quite a large part of the episode, really, from more or less from beginning to end. So let's get cracking. And the first section in the Politics strand, we have the now security detail officer Herc waiting for the mayor with his new partner outside City Hall. He worries that Lieutenant Hoskins told him the mayor had a breakfast meeting and goes inside to look for his commander. But instead of finding the lieutenant, he stumbles across Mayor Royce receiving oral sex from his secretary. Herc shuts the door quickly, but not before Royce notices him. And unsure what to do, he approaches his old partner later on, Sergeant Carver, for advice. Carver tells Herc that the problem is beyond his pay grade and suggests that they take it to someone with more experience of politics and suggests he meet his old commander, Major Valchek. Valchek meets with Herc at the Fells Point docks, and he reassures Herc that the incident will act in his favour as long as Herc keeps quiet about it. Meanwhile, Royce is considering moving Herc out of his security detail and checks with his chief of staff, Coleman Parker, to see if Herc has friends high up in the department. So Herc's sort of small misfortune that actually ends up as a sort of wonderful bonus. And this parallels quite nicely with the first section that we did with the case that Norris picks up, where it starts out horrible and seems like he's found himself in a world of shit, found himself with a terrible case that's going to be almost impossible to solve, and Herc has found himself in a position where he thinks he's going to be totally destroyed by the mayor for stumbling in on him, but it actually turns out to work in their favour.
So it's a nice really cool. Really, really cool little tale, this. Very undeserving of Herc to be in this position, I guess, but as Valchek explains, everything falls into place pretty precisely. Not that we've seen any of it so far, but obviously as veteran viewers we do know what happens, and I guess the episode starts with their idealistic discussion. I forgot what his colleagues called now, about the mayor's office being the best detail for career climbing. I guess despite the fact that it involves less actual police work than most other details I'd have thought. I guess if the mayor were in danger, then obviously your work would be very, very valuable. But most of what we've seen so far is Herc really wandering around, standing near vehicles, sitting in the back of vehicles. So Herc is about to demonstrate exactly how that works, and how in this case it's based on luck more than anything else, climbing the career ladder. So I quite like how he sort of prefaces that with their
better to be lucky than to be good.
Exactly, yeah. And I did like how Royce's blowjob was foreshadowed by a small interaction last week, as we mentioned, with his little receptionist.
Yeah, it's very subtle.
And another bit of foreshadowing, which is perhaps even more subtle, is the horse. There's two penises in the opening scene. As Herc wanders towards the city hall.
Well, you would be the one to notice that.
I thought you might mention that. But there is a horse that wanders by with a policeman on, and we are indeed privy to a little bit of penis. So maybe that's just completely unintentional. But I thought,
I am going to come straight out and say that the horse penis passed me by. I did not pick up on that, but I commend your sharp eyes.
Have a look at it. You'll see that it's definitely meant to be there. Like, it literally comes across that scene like a sort of a complete transition. So, yeah, very strange opening. Totally goes off the rails.
It is quite
very
strange.
quickly.
Yeah, it's a curious little thing because it starts off in quite a mundane way, and we see quite other somewhat protracted, and in other scenes might feel a bit totally unnecessary, but here it's doing it on purpose. It's quite protracted scenes of just watching Herc walking down a hallway or something like that, or just him having kind of a random conversation with someone that doesn't really, he just asks Coleman Parker, oh, was there a lunch thing or whatever. It doesn't really add much because we already know about that, but it's just building up this kind of mundane procedural thing, and then there's this sudden shock. It leads to that.
It goes off the rails. Yeah.
And I like the fact that after, obviously, he's walked in on the act and backed out again sheepishly, as he's walking down, there's like these eyes of the paintings and whatnot watching him as he goes down, and there's a notion of this facade of nobility, perhaps, and how he ends up stumbling on something that's a little bit more base and I suppose animalistic, if you like. Just this kind of primal sexual desire. They couldn't contain themselves, they just had to do it at work.
Yeah.
So
and
it's kind of strange. It feels like these eyes are watching him or something.
Herc. Well, I sort of saw it as Herc being judged by the previous mayors of Baltimore for really overstepping the mark here and putting his foot in it and killing his career in one fell swoop.
And like they're sort of threatening him to don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
This secret is with you and the paintings.
Yeah, definitely. So there's some really interesting elements to that opening, and as you say, it's just a really, really strange sort of two-half opening with some really mundane, where's this going material, followed by a complete, oh, okay, wow. Well, didn't expect that sort of moment. So, very cool. What's next?
Next we have... I was also going to mention that it was interesting that Royce asks if Herc has anyone kind of high up in the department. If by doing something like that or kicking him out, he might, and anger someone in the department, or to see if there's anyone that, that could threaten the situation. So it's kind of a good pointer, just another facet of the political game. Checking your sources and checking who your people are and who they're connected to.
Yeah, certainly.
So yes, the next bit that we have, Deputy Campaign Manager Norman Wilson waits for his candidate Carcetti in his kitchen with Carcetti's wife Jen. She recommends that Norman hurry him along, and Wilson does so, finding him playing battleships with his daughter. Carcetti refuses to leave until he finishes the game. He tells Wilson that the election is already lost. Later, Carcetti meets with police officers at the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge. They admit that they are reluctant to endorse his campaign, with Royce leading in the polls. Carcetti is understanding but asks that they hold back in their active support of Royce, and they agree to this. As they leave, Major Valchek reassures Carcetti that he has achieved the best outcome possible under the circumstances. So rejoining Carcetti here, getting a little bit more of the put upon figure, of Jen, and the wife having to put up with these kind of strange interludes where he's home and has to kind of like rush to play battleships with his daughter or something. You really do get a sense of these unusual times where he comes home and spends these almost like token visits with his family, but everything else is clearly squared on the politics. And Jen, although we've said before she's not a particularly developed character, she at least does a good job of kind of reflecting that side of it in her performance. And it's kind of interesting how he says about this game could still go either way. I thought that was an interesting little quote. I felt like that could have been the epigraph.
Okay, I was hoping the bunk better to be lucky than
or
to
that.
Be good.
Yeah, that one as well.
Yeah,
there was a couple of potentials in this episode.
No, it was a good scene. I felt like the comment on the battleships game was perhaps a bit on the nose, but it was a bit different this time around with Carcetti being sort of resigned to the failure and following the recent news about the polls. He's very disillusioned with the whole thing, desperately trying to catch up on daddy time whilst the schools are still off, and probably trying to do all he can to avoid this crazy stress that he's going through. And yeah, so the battleships is a nice game of chance just to convey that, and we see a very awkward exchange with Jen and Norman as she explains all she and the family will do to look pretty on Tommy's arm later in the evening. Everything's all about Tommy, and by the end of the episode he does get back into the swing of things with the debate, but obviously there's a big lack of focus this time around compared to our last episode where we really see him on the top of his game.
I suppose there's not a whole lot really here. It's just Carcetti having to make a bit of a compromise based on the amount of influence that Royce has. And obviously an interesting show that he manages them to agree to avoid actively supporting him. He's kind of like putting them on hold for the time being. So it's just kind of showing a small facet of the political game that he's having with Royce.
Stuff at the FOP lodge, is that? Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and there's obviously Valchek that was trying to set that whole thing up. He's got a real thing for Carcetti, and Valchek is very lucky that he's jumping in at the ground floor of this Carcetti administration as he's sealing his promotion to commissioner by doing these very things. He's giving Carcetti a reason to scratch his back later on.
Exactly.
Which is obviously worth mentioning because it doesn't seem like much at the moment, but Valchek is a very lucky bastard.
And it's just another example of, again, Valchek knowing the game very well.
Yeah. So it makes sense that he's the one that dishes out the advice to Herc this episode anyway. So we see that he's struggling to get endorsements with Royce looking so strong. Understandably, you don't want your mayor to know you have no faith in them, even if they would be kicking themselves after the election because Carcetti gets in. I guess late in the stage it's difficult to take risks like that. So it certainly makes sense. So I guess that's
that's about that for that little section there.
Yeah.
So we have another small one here. In his debate preparation, Carcetti is distracted and pays more attention to a problem with his son's school fees. And when pressed by Terry D'Agostino and Norman, he is able to come up with effective answers. During his preparation, Carcetti gets a visit from Valchek, who tells him about the recently murdered witness, knowing that Carcetti can use it as ammunition in the debate. So, as you're saying, Valchek continuing to do him favours and sealing that promotion. We see that Carcetti is still on the ball, even if he may appear distracted. He's clearly still very switched on, and despite all of his negativity, he's clearly putting in the time and effort to know what it is that he's got to do. So it seems like it's more self-deprecation than anything else. He doesn't feel all that earnest, because otherwise he wouldn't be putting any of the time in.
No, yeah.
There is a small part of him that still obviously believes that he could do it. And I guess there's the obligation, given how much time and effort and money the others are putting. So
yeah,
to be a little more cynical about it.
No, definitely. And I do like the Norman and Teresa debate pep talk. Carcetti obviously has a lot of arrogance and complacency about his ability to speak about these issues and rely on the shaky holes in Royce's administration to exploit him, but does not share this enthusiasm, of course, for the racial element when the episode's epigraph comes up. I can kick his ass at a debate, but I can't make myself black. So that's clearly one of his major concerns at this point. which is nice that they mention it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you were saying, Valchek being very helpful. The second time in this episode that he's very helpful, and as you were saying with others, it's certainly not a selfless helpful with Valchek. Valchek is clearly thinking about his future here when he gets in with Carcetti, and seems to have a bit of an inkling that he's got more of a chance than everyone else thinks. And obviously, with Herc though, oddly, Valchek seems to be completely selfless in the advice he gives. There's no reason he could benefit personally from the advice that Herc receives from him.
Well, not yet.
Not yet, certainly. But I guess that's...
He even says, maybe you could do me a good turn one day, or do me a favour one day. So he's just lining himself up for a favour later down the line, especially if he knows that, Herc is in a position where he could rise now. So
yeah, it's crazy to think where Herc could have been if Royce remained in power. Because as Valchek said, I know politics well. You're going to be rising the ranks for the next few years to keep yourself quiet about what you saw. Obviously, that didn't go very far once Carcetti got in. But it was pretty worth mentioning as well the "shut up and play dumb" line, which I thought was great. And Herc's just like, "Yep, I can do that." And there's like a real...
he certainly can.
There's a couple of levels to that, which just it does tickle me. So, yeah.
Yeah, so let's move on to the actual debate itself. So as the debate progresses, Carcetti's team watches on TV and is impressed with his answers. Carcetti delivers his carefully planned answer to Royce's assertion that crime is down in Baltimore, and Cutty watches from bed with a woman but soon changes the channel to sports. This we see from his perspective watching the debate. The homicide unit listens as Carcetti delivers his trump card, the murdered witness. The detectives joke about Norris's case making headlines. Also, State Delegate Odell Watkins seems impressed with Carcetti's speech, and the audience applauds Carcetti's answer as Burrell and Rules worry about the backlash for them. Royce's response is awkward and defensive.
Yeah, so lovely closer, really nice closer, drawing together a few threads of the city, a little bit like Lex's murder last episode. There seems to be these themes at the end that draw everything together in a really neat way. And the show is certainly getting better at demonstrating the interwoven processes of the city. And obviously we see a few people. We see Cutty. I guess we perhaps are talking about this in the wrong order, but we obviously see that the third attempt from the ladies at the gym seemed to go well, and he took to the third lady and took her to bed. So he certainly seemed more keen on her. Who else did we see? We saw Norris being appropriately dismayed about the way his case had been doctored when it came out on the telly. That must have been a bit of a shock. And of course, that's the moment when Vernon can start chuckling again because the tables have completely turned yet again. Carcetti giving Royce that gotcha look after his speech about the witness.
He certainly had that well rehearsed, and
yeah,
you learnt a lot from what he was being taught about delivering those messages in a certain way and slowing down and whatever other advice he was given from that guy who was like some kind of speech coach or whatever.
Oh, it certainly paid off there, yeah.
Yeah, and coming across as a legitimate, likeable politician with the facts, and Royce was very thoroughly dismantled there, I think.
Yeah, and I think we see Burrell and Rules watching as well, as they contemplate more and more how the department is leaking like a sieve. More and more.
No more surprises.
More surprises. 2 in an episode. That's got to be suicide for Burrell. And again, these tricky situations where we can see Burrell just getting in the firing line again and again, lining up to be shot over something he has no control. He's the ultimately responsible one, and he's meant to have some sort of control over that. But in an organisation this large, there's no way that he has any ability to control those sort of things. So in some ways, you really do have to feel sorry for Burrell in these situations.
I mean, in this this example, like you say, it's totally out of his hands.
Yeah. We see Royce's mistress guiltily looking on the telly as well. She always seems to have a shifty look on her face whenever we see her.
Yeah.
We're gonna make a thing of that. So, and let's not forget about Royce's response to the speech as well. It's such a weird response. Like, it's easy to write letters when all you have to do is write letters. It's just kind of really rambly and weak and misses the point.
And in that sense, is great
Yeah.
because it fits perfectly. It really is a stumbling, awkward mess that conveys nothing other than a bunch of, half comments about, that might try and be some kind of response to what Carcetti is saying. It's supposed to be some kind of strong retort, but it just ends up sounding ridiculous.
Yeah, it sounded so silly. So, a good bunch of scenes for the closing debate, which really rounded off the episode well. And of course, Naaman does become a part of this debate scene. I guess we'll get to him later on, will we?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that's all coming later.
Alrighty.
That's pretty much the end of the politics line. There are a few other bits and bobs, but they come into other sections, or other strands, I should say, to distinguish between the two. So let's move on to our next major strand, which is the neighbourhood kids. Slightly larger section, this one, or larger strand. Still getting them mixed up. First section. Naaman and his mother Delonda visit his father Weebay at prison. Weebay reassures them that he's doing well and checks that they are still receiving money from Brianna Barksdale. Weebay asks after his fish and jokes with Naaman about his facial hair. And Weebay asks how Naaman's work with Bodhi is progressing, and Delonda tells him that Naaman has not been applying himself and threatens to withhold money for his school things until he does so. Weebay repeats Bodhi's warning that Naaman's ponytail makes him an easy spot for the police. And back in the neighbourhood, the Stanfield drug-dealing Lieutenant Monk is giving away money to neighbourhood children to further his boss's reputation. Marlo and his bodyguard Chris watch from their nearby vehicle. So we have two situations, one person being withheld money and another bunch of people being given money. This is kind of a nice comparison there. And we start off with a nice little reveal of Weebay and Naaman, which is kind of nice because although it's been mentioned before, I think Bodhi says something like he only hires the guy because of who his father is, or respect for his father. It's not explicitly said. The relation here isn't really explicitly pointed out yet, so it's a nice nonchalant little reveal in the prison here, which I rather like.
Yeah, a really good way to keep the character of Weebay alive. A great character, despite only really having a bearing on the plot in season 1. He appears in all 4 of the subsequent seasons, which is great, and they find a way to keep him involved. And a really, really nice twist. I can certainly buy that Naaman and Delonda are part of his family. Certainly humanises him a bit more than he was in season 1, where he was this kind of killing machine who likes some fish. He certainly has a bit more going on with his life than we banked on.
Yeah, definitely.
And he has some fish tattoos on his arms, which I'd never noticed either until now. So this guy really, really is dedicated for life.
And doesn't seem like much of a relationship that he has with Delonda, though. Even later on, where there's a little bit of exploration about that, he just kind of seems quite bored with the whole thing. Like, doesn't really seem like much of a relationship. The focus is more between Naaman and Weebay.
Yeah. No, certainly that. He certainly has some interest in Naaman. Is enjoying seeing him grow up, and is also enjoying giving him the lessons he needs about being real and standing tall on the streets, being taken seriously. This certainly gets to the heart of what Dan was saying on his email, that he's being led down a path that he doesn't really want to play at all, and he needs to get rid of that ponytail, and his mum is, if anything, harder on him than Weebay is. So he's really got a lot of messages coming from all sides that he has to really step up to the street. I like how as soon as they cut away from Naaman being given that advice, we see Monk giving out the money to the street dealer, someone who is respected, someone who is taken very seriously, just to sort of demonstrate the point of how far he has to go.
Yeah. And again, they're handing out this money, and it seems like Marlo's making his own. He's got his own political campaign. He's doing his own donations in order to sweeten the deal. It's kind of nice where there's a little mini political thing going on here as well. Mm. He's sort of sweetening the neighbourhood with his vast amounts of money.
Although, I mean,
making it clear who's in charge.
yeah, definitely. When you really think about it, it's quite sickening, these handouts, really, because Marlo is obviously beginning to be idolized on the street, and for now, in the innocent summer, the kids are loving Marlo. But obviously, this $200 is there down the road. It's a form of debt, and obviously, it will be a way to command respect later on from these kids. So it's certainly a very, very shrewd move on their part, and quite sickening in many ways.
Yeah, it's quite dark, really.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, and obviously, I don't think this includes the bit with Michael and the kids getting their 200 yet, does it? Actually, that'll come a little bit later.
That comes later, yeah.
Okay, sure. All right, does that include the bit with Bodhi as well, or is that coming later as well?
No, that's later.
Okay, sorry. All right.
We do have a bit with Bodhi now, actually.
Okay.
So Michael and Naaman approach Bodhi to ask if Michael can have a job to earn money for school clothes and equipment for him and his younger brother. Bodhi refuses to employ them both, and Naaman suggests that Michael could take his job until he has the funds. Bodhi waves them away as he notices Sergeant Carver pulling up. Carver is accompanied by Bunk, and they are looking for Bodhi's recently murdered second-in-command, Lex, who obviously we had a look at before. Bodhi promises to call them if he sees Lex, knowing that he's probably dead. Naaman and Michael, having moved on, find their friends on a stoop and begin to talk about returning to school. They joke about the goals that they will chase, and Michael and Naaman get into a play fight. Monk arrives and continues to hand out money, and Michael is the only one of the group to refuse to accept the money and walks away. Marlo approaches Michael to ask why he's turned it down. And Michael initially doesn't make eye contact with Marlo, but after he insults him, Michael silently stares him down. Marlo smiles and lets him go. So yes, we have Michael and Naaman approaching Bodhi, and we see that Naaman clearly doesn't care too much about his position. He's not desperate to do his time, do his work on the street. He's quite happy to hand his position over to Michael. And I suppose when you've got a mother who, I suppose this comes later on, but when she does kind of make all these threats about withholding money and then ends up buying him all those clothes, that's clearly why he is the way he is. He expects to get everything no matter what anyway, and that's represented well here.
Mm. Oh, yeah. And really, really subtle ways of setting up Michael as well.
Yeah, I'll work for it,
Yeah, and there's a few things that are going to lead to his downfall. First of all, being noted as a very efficient drug dealer and a very skilled drug dealer. Obviously, Bodhi's not very happy at the moment about taking on someone random and unvetted, but we learn later on that he is actually a by far superior replacement to Naaman. And yeah, of course, the money as well, which we will get to. But yeah, I mean, Bodhi's not too upset that Lex hasn't been passed. Bodhi knows that he's been got.
Yep.
It's very much just a kind of a I guess a blasé thing. It's just the reality.
It just compounds how sinister the Marlo's organisation is, because before there would be a very clear event where someone had been killed and everyone would make a big deal about it, whereas here he's just disappeared and people are sort of a bit unsure how to react, and Bodhi knows what's happened, but doesn't really have anything to go on.
Yeah.
Other than a hunch, I suppose, or I suppose it is a certainty to some extent on the street, but it's a lot more mysterious and quite sinister, as I said.
Yep, certainly, and he's certainly not willing to lie to Carver. If he comes past, he will let him know, but he knows that won't be happening. So, yeah,
it's almost like Marlo is the boogeyman or something,
Oh, definitely.
People disappearing in all these abandoned houses and going into various parks and meeting dark figures on play sets and never being seen again. It's almost like he really does portray that the nightmare character, I suppose.
Oh yeah, definitely, and we'll get to that later. Obviously, the detail don't know anyone on the street, so they can't keep up with these losses, these mysterious losses, and they just see it as that there hasn't been any bodies. So what are we chasing? That's perhaps where Bubbles may have come in handy if they'd have kept in contact with him. Bubbles may have been there to notice that these people were gradually sloping off or running away or leaving town, skipping town, I guess would be a better term. But yeah, It's odd how far behind the detail is because of this new breed of murder that's come to the street.
And then we end up in the scene where they meet all their other friends on the stoop, and it's the talk of school begins. You really kind of feel school coming now. They're talking about all they plan to do and having those typical teenage boy conversations about girls and fighting over some nonsense. So yeah, it's a really sort of heartwarming scene, followed up by this continued sinister air as Monk goes around. You don't have to do nothing for it. Like, it's just kind of like, take the money. I'm giving you money. Take it.
Yeah. Don't look at me. Look at Marlo as well. He's the one to thank here.
Yeah.
So it's really, really, elevating his position in the street to kind of god status. And obviously, it's I guess the chat is a very good demonstration of Naaman's facade, his play tough, live easy attitude. He's called out for not living up to his talk on most of the occasions here, both sexually and
certainly by
and
Michael.
violence. Yeah, I mean Michael's seems to have the best bullshit detector. So I think that's certainly a nice demonstration of that aspect of Naaman, how most of what he's a big talker, but not much of a walker. And another great discovery, our first discovery really about Michael. He's the one who doesn't want anything for nothing, and he doesn't want to be indebted to those powerful streakings. He says as much later on, and I guess that really shows that he is the most mature, the most world-weary of these boys. He has, just a lot more smarts to him, really. And unfortunately, that won't work in his favour, as Marlo is instantly attracted to this. You can kind of see in Marlo's eyes, there's this kind of eerie dollar signs behind his eyes as he stares at him, as he sizes up Michael when he comes to see him personally. And he just must love how he doesn't scare. Michael is by no means intimidated by looking at him when Marlo approaches him. And you can already see that he's being scouted for the group in just a few episodes' time. So, yeah, not the sort of thing that you'd be able to pick up at all on your first watch, but it's great that on these repeat watches we can really see a lot of what's going on underneath and how sinister the Stanfield organisation is.
And it's not the only time in the episode that Michael has a potential in him spotted by somebody else, because Cutty ends up seeing the quality in him as well and wants to take him on. So Michael's rejected two figures that have seen potential in him, and we see this isolationist, doing things his own way attitude that carries him through the show and puts him where he ends up at the end. Specifically as we see him go through the organisation and dealing with Bodhi and how he ends up as that replacement for Naaman to being so much more effective, it also leads him to believe, well, why should I work for someone else?
Yeah.
Why can't I? If I'm good at it, why not just take what I want and do it my own way?
And that certainly rings true with, he's really been the master of his life so far. He's already a father to his brother. And
well, he's had to be. That's kind of come from his upbringing and or lack thereof.
Yeah, certainly. So in that sense, he really is ready for life in a way that the other boys aren't yet.
So yeah, Marlo liking what he sees.
Yeah, and on the other hand, we have Naaman, who has the complete opposite reaction. I'll take any motherfucker's money if you're giving it away. Which I know a lot of Wire fans like to mention that line because it's mirrored completely by Clay Davis later on in the episode.
Well, Naaman's quote actually comes in the next section.
Okay.
So shall we move on to
that
bit?
Right, sweet, yep.
So this is the third section of our Neighbourhood Kids strand. Later, Michael, Naaman and Randy discuss their good fortune. Naaman claims that he needs the money despite his family being rich because his mother has threatened to withhold money for his school clothes. Suddenly, Donut pulls up in a stolen SUV. Naaman gets into the car and they joke about what to steal next. But Carver happens upon the scene with Herc and calls it in when they flee from him. Randy is quickly caught by Officer Walker, who searches him for drugs and finds the $200 for school clothes money, taking it from Randy on suspicion of drug dealing. He refuses to accept Randy's story that his foster mother gave him the money, pocketing it and telling Randy that if his foster mother comes to the district, they can have it back. So, yes, we have the little scene where they're just discussing how lucky they are, and obviously Naaman's famous quote that's also said by Clay Davis. And I like that this is the beginning of a couple of bits where Donut is that kind of character where you have the four main boys, but it feels like he's a bit of a hanger-on, like he is like the fifth wheel, the fifth member of the band or something, you know. He kind of pops in and out here and there, and he's established as this carjacking character. Like much later on in the season, we see that he's capable of opening Prez's door when he kind of locks himself out and everything. So he's established as this carjacking character.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly all he has to him. That is his character, and when you don't have the time you need to, make a real character out of that, it certainly suffices. It's certainly a good alternative. And Donut is a very entertaining character, very funny. It certainly is a great scene to see these boys gathering around the Chevy that he's stolen. And also, I think this scene is the only Dookie line in the episode, when he just pops out with "I be scared in the woods," which I thought was a really really funny and off the wall addition to the conversation. It just sort of comes out of nowhere, not acknowledged by anyone. Everyone just goes back to their conversation about hunting down the woods. I guess they just did that so we don't forget that he exists as a character. He is so quiet for much of the show. It doesn't really perk up till season 5. So certainly worth noting that, while he does feel part of the scenery, he certainly feels like one of the important characters. He really doesn't have a lot to say as a character early on. Yeah. And of course we have
Officer Walker as well.
Oh yes, of course. Who is appearing?
Who, not the first time we'll see him do something very questionable. Although I guess his actions feel somewhat justified given how little he knows about the situation, and it is still money essentially handed to him. Not illegally, but it's still a kind of questionable situation for him, and he's not buying Randy's story, and there's no way that Randy can give him the actual reason. So. It's a bit of a shame for him, but Officer Walker is still very, clearly very rough with him, even though he's just a kid. So.
Oh yeah, our second appearance of Walker, of course, he was the involved in the brothel bust in season 2, and he is obviously now transferred from the southeast to the western. He's making it clear that he's going to be one of the major a-holes of the season. Even if we haven't quite seen how depraved his actions can get yet, obviously he will go along and break Donut's fingers one by one in not too long. I think he's arguably the worst cop on the show. Whilst all the other police are, I guess, unlikable because they're lazy or they're all about self-preservation, this guy clearly has some sadistic urges that go beyond that. So in many ways he is one of the real big baddies with no redeeming qualities on the show.
Yep, that's right. And we'll see him bothering Bubbles a little bit later on.
Yeah.
Well, not in this episode, but later on in the season.
Certainly. And just before we move on, it's worth talking about the Herc and Carver moment. They certainly have a refresh where they get back to the old days of their ripping and running. Carver almost feels like he has to fight to stifle his old Western rip and run urges here with Herc. And, Herc finally smiles for the first time this season. He gets back to what he knows and loves. And, it's nice to see Carver suddenly realise that, hang on a minute, I'm an adult now, I need to go and see them later, intimidate them later, and make sure that they don't do it again. So we see him going to pounce on them while they're playing. And Naaman's certainly very startled that he knows his name, he knows where he lives, he's keeping...
Oh, we haven't had that bit yet.
Oh, God, sorry, yeah, we're jumping ahead big time.
Jumping ahead there.
Yeah.
But I was going to say that it's nice that Carver's community relations as... Bunny taught him, that pays off.
Yeah.
He realises that he doesn't have to go around chasing everyone anymore. There's no longer that necessity for them to do those ridiculous things where they're running around and chasing them in the cars and whatnot. And he no longer has any need for that because he's actually learnt the information and he knows the people that he's supposed to be policing. So it's good that knowledge has been transferred and taken on board and is actually being of considerable use.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So let's move on to the next bit, our final section of the Neighbourhood Kid strand. So Randy talks to his friends about Walker's actions and learns that he is known as one of the many corrupt Western District officers. Donut continues to talk about what vehicle he would like to steal next, and Dookie warns him that he's already almost been caught once. Sergeant Carver then arrives at the boys' hangout and gives them fair warning that if he sees any of them near a stolen car in the future, he will deliver a beating in an alley rather than bringing them in. Neyman is disbelieving, and Carver uses Neyman's name to prove that he knows who they are, where they hang, and where they live. Neyman later returns home to find that his mother has laid out new clothes for him despite her threats. He goes downstairs and thanks her, and when he returns, he turns on the television to find Councilman Gray talking about education in the political debate, but quickly switches over to play his game. But just following on from Carver's bit where he actually does go and catch up with them, gives them their fair warning, still is able to use the threats. You know, it's a very Colvin-esque speech that he gives to them, really. It really is just following on in that vein. He knows how to do the carrot and the stick, as Bunny would say. And he shows them what will happen if they choose the stick instead, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's nice. It's nice that... And that's exactly the sort of thing that would scare Neyman as well, because, again, despite his attempt to, in classic Neyman style, despite his attempt to brush it off and to act tough, it only takes mention of his name and he knows where he lives for that to put him off.
Yeah, there's certainly a sort of crumble on his face when he says that. Yeah, so really, really good stuff from Carver there. He's learned a lot from his superiors, Daniels and Bunny together. They've sort of pointed him in the right direction. And he's now a very smart copper. It's odd that he didn't point Herc towards one of those when he asked for advice about the whole oral sex thing. But I guess he knows that they're two principled police for that, and that Valchek, his old boss in the southeast, is perhaps the best to speak to about that. But yeah, really, really good to see Carver doing these things. He just learned so much and is really, really an intelligent police officer now.
And then Neyman finds that his mother's threats were nothing, and he ends up with a load of new clothes anyway. So it just kind of reinforces this notion that he doesn't have to work particularly hard to get the things that he wants.
Yeah.
And I do feel like, to some extent, it's trying, because obviously we have the bit with Tony Gray talking about education, and I'll come back to that because there's something to be said about that. But it's him switching over and going to his game, which is a nice ad for Halo 2, I might add. We all know that when we play games, there's a massive logo of what the game is as we're playing it. That's obviously a very common thing that we all see.
You could argue it's the demo version, but...
Yeah. One hell of a demo. E3 demo, maybe.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like it's trying to make a sort of glorification of violence point, maybe. Maybe it's not, but it feels like it's just a little extra bit that they could swing in at the end. But, I don't know, if it is trying to do that, it does fall flat somewhat when you're... I don't know if they're trying to make some kind of comparison here where it's just he's zoning out and playing games and doing all the shooting and it's continuing the glorification of the violence culture. But, you know, he's shooting aliens in a video game that's absolutely nothing like the brutality or gravity of the street. So if that was an attempt at doing such a thing, I think that it falls a little flat.
Yeah, I think perhaps more it's just us seeing how Tony Gray is literally speaking directly to Neyman. He's saying we need to take these kids before the corners take them, and there's no sense of in the ear and processing. It's in the ear and one out the other ear. And he just wants to go back to his mindless entertainment. He's got his Xbox 360 all sorted. He's clearly living...
Can't really expect someone in his position to be giving much of a care about that.
No, certainly. He can't even connect it to his life at this point, I'm sure. So, cushy new school clothes, Xbox 360. It's not too bad an evening for Neyman. So we certainly see where he comes from. And, I mean, the school clothes, in inverted commas, of course, none of those are school-ready. But obviously it's a big part of Delonda's life that Neyman becomes the hard kid that disobeys all the school rules and establishes himself as a big threat on the street. So it makes sense that she would buy him those. And I think he does wear those clothes underneath his school jumper. So he does at least try to please his mum.
Yeah. And going back to the little snippet that we have, Tony Gray, it's interesting that he's making very much the right point about the whole political point that was being made at the debate about the murdered witness and the culture of the violence and everything is that he's right. They do need to start with the kids, because it starts with that. It starts with that mentality that's instilled with them as they're younger, and they get entrenched and they become a product of their environment. And he's actually making a good point about that. But Tony Gray doesn't really end up getting anywhere in the whole election process. So it's kind of curious that he is making quite an important point, but the show makes its own point of sidelining him somewhat and intentionally cutting him off by the very person that precisely these changes would benefit.
That's a very good point. And again, better to be lucky than to be good. Carcetti using the witness to elevate himself, whereas, as you say, Tony Gray perhaps was a better candidate for the job, but wasn't willing to use such shrewd exploitation tactics.
So yeah, that's that little bit there. Anything else you want to say about the neighbourhood kids?
No, I think that covers all of it really. What have we got? What's our next section?
So we're going to have a very quick stopover with Stanfield organisation, where we make a very short single scene where it's just them. So after making the rounds giving out the money to the neighbourhood children, Marlo assembles his soldiers for a shooting practice session. Monk gets a phone call from Old Face Andre, who demands a resupply, and Marlo takes over the call and quickly puts him in his place.
Okay, yeah, that is a quick section. Again,
I don't think we ever saw anybody else. I certainly didn't really see any Barksdales doing any practice shooting. It was all pretty wild from what we saw then. But again, just keeping the changes and differences between the two organisations on the boil, and showing here that the Stanfields are trained. They're trained killers. They're not just people who are tough and act tough or whatever and just happen to have guns and violence. They are trying to actually train people to be proper shooters.
Yeah. All their scenes genuinely have an underlying sort of scary feel to them, very threatening feel, and this is certainly no exception. Target practice in the woods, pretty horrific stuff that really is militarizing the street more and more. And of course, we'll talk about it more perhaps in the appropriate major cases unit section, but quite a big moment in terms of the phone call here. Not only introducing us to Old Face Andre in this scene, who's quite an important character who's not quite cut out to be part of the Stanfield crew throughout season 4, but also piques the details interest and moves the investigation on forward for them as they hear Marlo on the phone. So quite an important scene in introducing quite a few things about the Stanfields for us.
Yes, it's just a nice little addition there, and building up for Old Face Andre's demise as well.
Yeah. Okay.
And,
MC.
They end up getting caught. They end up getting caught on the wire, of course.
Yes, yeah, for the first time.
Roll credits.
Well.
But that comes next as we go to the major case unit. So unless there's anything else you want to say about Marlo or the Stanfield organisation.
No. I mean, their sections are quite short. I guess there's so much interlink between the institutions now that someone's got to take a short shrift, and we saw a lot of Stanfield with the neighbourhood kids. So I don't feel like we lost out on Marlo.
No lack of influence this week.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's take a look at the major case unit strand. At the unit office, Detective Freamon prepares to serve the subpoenas on political figures from the Barksdale organisation. Sydnor worries that the action could damage all of their careers, and Perlman shares his concern. Freamon notices that Perlman has held back 2 subpoenas, ones for Clay Davis and Andy Krawcheck, planning to delay serving them until after the polls close. Freamon tells her that this is their only window for the investigation. At the moment, the politicians have to worry about how their actions appear to the public, and at any other time the unit would be shut down for pursuing this investigation. Perlman realises that Freamon has played her by holding the investigation until now, and that he lied when he said it was pushed back by fresh cases. Freamon pleads ignorance. Later, Perlman discusses her resentment with Daniels, and Daniels points out that Freamon had a case, and then manages to make Perlman laugh about Freeman's tried and true manipulations. Daniels states that he's just glad that Freamon is manipulating someone other than himself. Or rather than him. But yeah, so we'll come on to the very, very rare moment in The Wire, which is Daniels, showing any teeth.
The laughter,
like, smiling.
Right?
We've had a couple of them. It's not used to seeing such a jolly Daniels.
Yeah. Well, he's in a really good place. So.
Yeah, exactly. Let's start with back where we have the push and pull with the subpoena scenes. It's kind of nice that there's all of these moments where they're jostling for position about their position on the subpoenas, and I like the exchange between Freamon and Perlman here. It's nice. Yeah,
really interesting discussion about the consequences and merits of serving high-profile subpoenas at the election time, and we see that Freeman's really been sort of 2 or 3 steps ahead of everything, and what Perlman thought was his duplicity was actually not, and it was actually a third level to it when he was actually, fresh cases didn't get in the way at all. It was really me waiting for this moment right here to pounce, and you're going to serve them no matter what. And odd, because Perlman does have the power to stop them, you'd have thought, but she does eventually kind of get won over by Freamon. And I guess that's perhaps because he agrees to put his name on the paperwork solely. But yeah, it's a really good discussion here. Very interesting to see Freamon really, really playing the game quite heavily, very fearlessly.
And having Freamon following this up allows there to be conflict within the detail, because I think it would be a bit dull if the major case unit and all the detail was constantly in a state of harmony and that everyone was always working well together to get things done. With McNulty now gone, there still needs to be some kind of conflict going on, so he's usually the conflagrative character, so instead Freamon has this sort of a to-do with Perlman instead. So it's nice to kind of keep the conflict going in the major case unit, which keeps it fresh.
Yeah, that's true. It feels like Freamon is certainly coming more towards the end of his tether and is more willing to step into this McNulty-defiant territory. And yeah, absolutely, it keeps things interesting, even if the major case unit has sort of taken a big backseat compared to its previous role in the show. Worth mentioning as
it also shows in reference to what happens in season 5, where it goes along with McNulty's plan, that definitely not not above making these kind of calls to piss off high level people, and just for the sake of saying fuck you to the system to get it done.
Yeah, this certainly acts as a good transition point to if you were to argue for that aspect of season 5, this would certainly be something you could use as kind of a defense. Yeah. So I certainly like that aspect of it. And it's worth mentioning also about the useful catch-up with Demper that we get through the conversation as well. We hear Demper is in dire straits in the polls despite Royce's endorsement of him. And she then expresses concerns about the possibility of Bond coming in next term, and negatively assumes that she'll be bumped back to basics with a racial reshift. And we all know that the reality of that will be much more positive, and Bond, who comes in later in season 4, is actually a very, very big positive force for change in the courthouses of Maryland. So, yeah, really nice that's sort of spoken about early. They certainly had that character set up from a very early point.
This exchange between Freamon and Perlman, especially when Perlman's talking more about the effect that it will have on her career, did remind me of the scene that she has with McNulty outside Levy's office, where he's talking about, everyone stays friends and everyone has a fucking future. He's kind of continuing that with Lester, although he's able to restrain himself a little bit more.
Yeah. He's sort of...
But she's saying a lot of the very, very similar things there.
He's playing the denial card. He's saying, you can assume I know these things that McNulty wants to shout about, but I'm just going to be a police for now. That's my role. My role is to investigate. That's what I'm doing. I'm not going to... I'm not going to be there and boast to you and get all egotistical about it. Sort of. So he certainly takes a bit more of a tactful approach to things.
No, it doesn't come across as entirely genuine.
No, in some ways it comes across as even more frustrating because it's so sort of snide, isn't it? And as she speaks
false
to
modesty.
Yeah, she speaks to Daniels about it later on. It really, really grates her, and it really is this sort of jealousy, and I guess there's a bit of jealousy involved there. But
definitely.
It's nice that Daniels lightens the mood, even if he does kind of give her a bit of a harsh dose of truth as well.
I'm the father you never had, and I don't want to be disappointed in you ever again.
Yeah, really good impression. You got to give it to Daniels. He can bring it.
It definitely gets the facial expression right.
Yeah, he just needs the glasses.
Yeah, very endearing scene between the two of them there later on, where they're discussing it in bed. Like it is quite a heartwarming scene. Again, Daniel's in a very good place, and just one of those rare moments where he's actually smiling and laughing and not sort of stressed or having to deal with people's mistakes or dealing with a case. Or he's, as he says, he's someone else is having to deal with it rather than him.
Yeah, he's
Seems
sort of
like he's
moved
got
on.
a very cushy life at the moment.
Definitely. Yeah, the career and love life falling into place all at once. So you can understand why he's beginning to smile again.
And that feels deserved.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, he takes a bit of a backseat in the show this season for good reasons. He's in a good place. There's not much drama really in his life until Carcetti comes along and tries to sort of whistle-stop tour him over to, I think, Colonel or something like that. He elevates him to, but yeah, it's certainly been a good journey for Daniels.
Let's move on to the next section. So with the subpoenas ready, Freamon offers to serve them personally to protect Greggs and Sydnor, but they both agree to go. Greggs to Krawcheck and Sydnor to Clay Davis. The senator is especially distressed and visits Royce in outrage. Davis tells Royce that there is a strong possibility of the receipt of dirty money, but insists that, as Royce is deputy campaign manager responsible for the primary elections funding, it is an ungrateful move of the BPD to accuse him of money laundering. He closes by telling Royce that his campaign will no longer receive any financial assistance from him unless Royce has the Baltimore police back off. Krawcheck calls next with a similar complaint. Later, we see Burrell fearing for his job, promising the mayor that there will be no more surprises from within the police department, but informs Royce that he is unable to do anything about subpoenas that have already been issued. Burrell discusses the problem with Rules, asking who in the unit is the most likely instigator. And Rules tells Burrell that his best guess is Lester Freamon and recommends proper supervision for the unit.
Okay, so let's perhaps mention that this is our first ever real shit on the show.
Yes, the famous quote, the much auto-tuned and remixed quote.
Yeah, it's like time stops. It's great. It doesn't matter how many times you've watched it, particularly seeing so much of the normal wire when they finally bring in this shit thing. It's like time stops. It's surreal, and I like how they gradually get longer as the show goes on, and Isaiah Whitlock Jr. sort of gets a bit more brave with each one. So
Yeah. they're so ridiculously overlong, but also the right length.
Yeah, it's
just can't quite explain it. But just especially the one much later on with is it Nerese Campbell?
Yes, that's right. It's season 5.
It just goes on forever. That's
It's
like a minute long.
Oh dear. I think that the most, the scene that's on the scene that's on YouTube more than any other scene is definitely the Sydnor Sphinx Club scene. That was the first scene of the show I ever saw, thanks to YouTube auto-tune compilations. So that's certainly quite an important scene from that perspective. But yeah, it's certainly worth mentioning. Also, the first time we see Clay Davis really go on a kind of almost a sing-song, soulful rant in a way that only he can do, and really get pumped up to Royce about how angry he is and how self-righteous he is about his, the way he assumes that he should be laid on with all the royal respect he deserves. Really good scenes for those. And yeah, more to learn about Freamon. I love the way he says, "This is fire," as he sets them down, certainly upping the drama for us.
Yeah.
Getting rightfully dramatic about the subpoenas.
And of course, with Clay, we get the repetition of Naaman's line.
Yes, that's right, yeah. I don't know what they mean by that. People have tried to connect that to the end of show cycles. You know how people become other people at the end of the show?
Yeah.
I've heard, Naaman becoming Clay Davis is one of them, using the public speaking as another justification for that. But I can't really think of another reason they'd be connected. I think it's just a fun way of linking scenes together.
Certainly not as overt as other examples, I think.
No, certainly.
And of course, Rules later on smart enough to know exactly who the problem is, exactly where the problem is coming from in the unit, and he recommends this proper supervision that we hear about, which comes in the form of Lieutenant Marimo later on. Yeah,
it's a shame really, because Freamon has sort of slept under the radar for the whole show so far. The bosses have, at most opportunities, assumed he's a bit of a hump, and they've kept him there, thinking he'll cause no harm. And I guess now that McNulty's finally taking his leave, they're starting to keep closer tabs on what's going on. Freamon is finally getting the reputation he deserves in many ways, and he's about to get outed, sorry to say, with Marimo coming in.
Yeah, it just comes and totally screws the unit up, so...
Yeah, it's sad to see, very sad to see. Yeah. And, yeah, there we go. So, nice to see Sydnor. I think Sydnor's very hesitant when Freamon asks him to go and serve the subpoena to Clay Davis, particularly because Clay Davis is the much more difficult candidate to serve it to. At least Andy Krawczyk's going to, retain some sort of composure.
But he makes the effort, doesn't he? I mean, both he and Greggs, like they both end up agreeing to go, so they've take a certain pleasure from that, despite their hesitance. I mean, Greggs less so, but she's quite happy to fuck them where they live, as she says.
Yeah, she seems very proud about it, and Sydnor seems very distracted about it. He's trying all he can to get out of the room as fast as possible and keep everyone's minds off the subpoena.
Yeah.
So he sort of talks about Sphinx Club and, tries to go down the I'm a happy chappy route, just let me out of the room. So, yeah, certainly an interesting way of doing that, and I like how they all come at once. There's no kind of separation.
Let's move on to the final section of the Major Case Unit strand then.
Okay.
Which is with the wiretap on Monk's phone, and that continues to prove fruitful for the unit. They have a record of the call received from Old Face Andre at the shooting practice session, and are able to identify the nature of the call and Marlo's voice, despite the background noise. Greggs and Freamon identify the sound of gunshots and wonder why Marlo is holding a target practice session when they've been able to link his organisation to any violence apart from that committed against them.
Naughty Marlo.
So, yeah. Sorry?
Naughty Marlo slipping on the phone etiquette.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting part, an interesting weakness that they have is that they don't have the same kind of phone discipline. But they got the stronger discipline everywhere else. So,
well, I mean, you say that. I mean, as they said, that's the first time Marlo has been on the phone in, a year? Something like that. And I don't quite understand why. I'm not sure why Old Face Andre is so important that Marlo would need to finally break his phone truce. Perhaps he assumed that the gunfire would mask any possible wiretapping. But yeah, it's strange. It's certainly a strange choice. They needed something to kickstart the detail, and this certainly did it.
Just needed to give him a bit of a scare. I mean, it is suggested that he's, Monk is like, why do you keep calling me? It is suggested that this isn't obviously a one-time thing. So maybe Marlo feels the need to step in here and does feel somewhat, ironically enough, feels protected by the gunfire.
Yeah, it's kind of a comfort blanket.
Yeah. So yeah, it's nice that they mentioned that. It's strange that they come across all this gunfire, despite the fact that they've not actually seen any violence from him. So
yeah, I love the way they put it. It's like nothing for a year, and then you get them on the phone, and it's like a war zone. It's really nice. It's certainly a lot of truth to that, and yeah, details heating up. It's a shame that the next episode the details going to go to shit. Like Marimo is going to come in, and I believe I think it's Herc and Dozeman that become the new detail masters.
That's right.
So
they it's typical of the Wire to have this success and to have things look like they're beginning to rise and to build a new case, and then oh no, we're just going to come and screw that up now. So.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the Major Case Unit in this episode. Some really good stuff there. Keeping it fresh.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at Cutty. Cutty continues his labouring job with a team of gardeners. He's picked up a working knowledge of Spanish, particularly swear words. The crew boss suggests that Cutty could work as a second crew chief, and they could cover twice as much ground. Cutty refuses because of his commitment to his boxing gym, and later at the gym, Cutty continues to train Justin, who is preparing for an upcoming bout. Cutty is approached by Sharon Jones, the mother of one of his students named Spider. She offers Cutty a dinner date and makes her availability abundantly clear, and he tells her that he has little free time, but asks if she could bring him dinner at the gym. Later, Cutty watches as Michael works a heavy bag and is very impressed by his natural ability. Another neighbourhood mother, Gail, approaches Cutty with a peach cobbler. She has no sons, but is just impressed with Cutty regardless. And on another night, Michael returns to the gym and with Naymond to work the heavy bag once more, and Naymond notices that Cutty is being flirted with by another mother. Justin interrupts Michael before his time is up, and this sparks a fight, which Cutty quickly breaks up, and allows Michael to finish his time and encourages him to accept training so that he can spar, offering to train him himself. But Michael declines. So just covering the whole Cutty track in one section there, just keeping it all together. Starting with where he's at his labouring job, is clearly feeling a bit more comfortable with it, is getting in the rhythm of things, accepts the hard work, and is doing his best to enjoy it and get involved and speak the language of his colleagues. So it shows a continuation from his successes from Season 3. That's carrying on through the first episode and through to the second one still, that he's got that positive attitude and that he's in a good place and that he's on the way up. So, yeah, just keeping things positive with the Cutty track this episode. Yeah,
interesting to see that we see the landscaping before the boxing. They're obviously leaving an element of ambiguity regarding whether his gym project had legs in it. And it's certainly made abundantly clear later on that it really has picked up. And we see he has a number of extra staff that work underneath him, kind of an official brand logo up in the corner.
That's right, yeah.
Busy
new equipment.
Yeah, new equipment, busy and active membership. And, of course, Avon in the Platinum Members Club. So
that's right, yeah. He asked not to be put on the wall, but he ends up there anyway.
Yeah, it's just too much respect for him. And I guess his long-term imprisonment would not create too much of an issue, perhaps. But, yeah, it's cool to see that, like, staying true to his word. And, yeah, as you say about the happiness with his life, Cutty hasn't left behind the landscaping, as tempting as it would be to pretend that he's made the boxing his be-all and end-all. The show does need to address like how he will keep himself afloat, and he's certainly able to treat the job as a job and not get frustrated with how boring it is now that he's found something in his life that he can enjoy pursuing, or, sort of as his main time thing. He can enjoy his boxing afterwards. So,
and he got so much money from Avon that he probably was able to use some of that, so he didn't have to kind of maybe he didn't have to be full time or whatever, or didn't have to do as many hours with his landscaping job.
Yeah.
But it just maintains the fact that he's still working and still maintaining that positive attitude and still in a somewhat transitionary stage.
Yeah, definitely. But
they don't want to build him up as having completely succeeded and found everything that he needs.
No, not yet. But it's certainly a big change, isn't it? With what he's done with the gym now, everything's working out for him, and ladies are lining up at his door.
Yeah. Well, it's not a surprise, really, because there can't be many people who... I mean, he must be known as that figure who was part of the Barksdale organisation and has got clean and is now, the law-abiding citizen. And he's a very physical boxing guy, so I should imagine sort of experienced now, wise. I mean, wise is his name, for goodness sake. He's got a good air about him, I suppose. He comes across as being very sure of himself, and he's, as I say before, he's sort of cleaned up and he's now a law-abiding man, and that's probably very attractive to the single ladies in that neighbourhood.
Oh yeah, and such a sort of community role model that would be irresistible, I imagine, really. So not just the ladies, of course. I mean, the landscaping boss has changed his tune as well, rather than sort of reciting quite grim, foreboding sort of prose at Cutty about the pains of landscaping. He's now clearly impressed with how Cutty's attitude has changed, how he's landed on his feet. He's trying to recruit him to pay more money into his firm. Obviously, he's not going to accept that, but it's everything really is just going up and up for Cutty at this point.
It's nice that in his interaction with Michael, we get a precursor to what we see about Michael's relationship with his father, and that Cutty does approach him in a somewhat paternal way. There is that element to it, and I train you myself, and encouraging but realistic, and trying to not impose, but sort of impart some wisdom. And it does seem like somewhat fatherly advice, I suppose. But of course, Michael is quick to reject it.
Yeah. It's not clear that it's an unusual rejection at this point. That won't be until later on, until we see Michael kind of literally run out of a car. But it's certainly there on the surface at this point. The problems that Michael's going through. And we see that obviously Justin and Spider are there causing trouble as well. They're clearly the
Again?
What's that, sorry?
Again?
Yeah, yes, as always, they're very loyal.
So they were causing trouble the first time they got there.
Yeah, no, that's true. They seem to be more loyal now, though, even if they are more embittered. I think because they're, these guys are Stanfield employees, let's not forget. These guys are being exposed to a bit more hardship than the rest of them.
And they've been tamed somewhat in the gym, so
yeah, got a little bit of both worlds.
Progression there.
Yeah, so yeah, as you say, for the second time in the episode, Michael is refusing a stranger's kindness. The $200 isn't going in his pocket, nor is the training. And this time around, it certainly feels like a bit more of a deep-seated rejection. Yeah, I mean, anything else to say? I think I'll quickly add that I really enjoyed the exchanges between Cutty and the women, the 3 different exchanges, although I think we only see the third one from a distance. Really, really satisfying and awkward to see how well Chad Coleman plays it. And the mums are really great as well for their one-time appearances in the show. They certainly do a really good job of being very funny and very convincing at the same time as their role in the society. So really, really fun. And I like how it's only the third one where he actually takes his eyes off the kids. With the previous 2, he's, not interested whatsoever. He's literally just sizing up Michael the whole time. And it's only when a scuffle breaks out between Justin and Spider that he even notices the kids are fighting. And he sort of has to run away and step in and be the man and, I'm sure, impress the lady even more and take her home that evening. So
I really like the way he says, I won't tolerate this foolishness.
Yeah, it's like I
really like that.
Some wisdom right there from Cutty Wise. Definitely. And, it's not all going to be plain sailing for him. He's going to get into a little bit of trouble about this womanizing, although it does feel a little bit forced upon him at this point. But yeah, it's going to, annoy some of the kids, certainly, as we'll see later on.
Yeah. But otherwise, things are all still very good for Cutty.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very happy.
And Chad C. Coleman is excellent in this episode.
Yeah, so good. So good.
Let's take a quick look at Bubbles, with whom we spend a very short period of time, a couple of little bits. Just put them all together in one section here. So Bubbles and his young protege Sherrod continue to make their living selling goods from a shopping cart, but Sherrod struggles to meet the demands of the job and is not able to add up the price of their wares. Later, Bubbles tries to hide his drug use from Sherrod, who he thinks is asleep. Sherrod is actually awake and worrying about Bubbles' criticism, and he tells Bubs that he is willing to go back to school.
So short.
Yeah.
Yeah,
just a little bit here. We see that Sherrod is now, this is the new protege. Not sure what happened to the other kid. That's kind of never really suggested whether it's supposed to be the same person or if it's not, or that's never really covered. But it doesn't really matter too much because we're picking up this new track here, and we can see that Sherrod is struggling here. And it's nice that we get that parallel between the landscaping boss saying to Cutty, you could go out in your own truck and we could double down and all this sort of stuff. And Bubbles imparts exactly that same advice to Sherrod, that if he wanted to and he was able to put the time in and the effort to learn, that they could cover twice the area. They're both trying to enter this doubling in size of their business. And we see also how much Bubbles' business, such as it is, has evolved. He's gone from the white t-shirts to this full, I suppose, convenience store on wheels. So he's clearly doing quite well for himself at this stage.
Yeah, definitely. And his original protege was the inspiration for that. He's suggested the seasons are changing. You got to expand your repertoire, and yeah, Bubbles Depot. It's a big symbol of the show, and it's finally born here. Yeah, I mean, his protege has changed to Sherrod, who we saw last season very, very briefly early on with one of the street gangs. I kind of wish his old protege was still there, because he was a much more intriguing character for me. Sherrod is a very tragic character. He's clearly got lots of problems. It might sound mean, but a bit like Johnny, I just don't find him an intriguing character at all. He is frustrating. Doesn't give school much of a chance at all when he does go in. I actually find Bubbles' strand throughout season 4 to be one of the weaker parts of the season. Actually, it's not till right at the end, when Bubbles has his breakdown, that we really sort of feel like it's been going somewhere. And he does kill Sherrod as well, as of course, which is very, very painful.
I guess we do get quite a few repeated moments where he keeps getting beaten up by that guy.
That's true, yeah, I did forget about that. That's certainly true. But for the most part, it does feel like
Bubbles' tragedy is sort of laid on quite thick throughout these bits.
Yeah. And it's
but I kind of like that he's trying to hide his drug habit. That's very kind of tragic in a slightly more muted way.
Yeah, the bit when he goes into school with Sherrod. That's quite heartwarming. Like, he really is putting in an effort for this kid. And we see that he's in a bit of a new situation. Aside from the business, things otherwise kind of seem worse for him. He has found this sort of, I don't know quite what it is. It's some sort of cardboard box / warehouse that he's living in, sort of just off the side of the train tracks.
It's like some storage unit, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit strange, and we sense that Sherrod is a very difficult character to bring up, and he's wearing him down a lot. And they're in their little shed at the end injecting heroin in a very sort of downbeat way, as that would always be, that behaviour. It's certainly a much more grim picture for Bubbles than we've seen with Cutty, one of our other sort of side characters. And Bubbles is there trying to find his purpose in life, and unlike Cutty, hasn't quite found it yet, perhaps. And there's this sort of glass...
he's got a bit more hardship to go through yet.
Yeah, definitely. And we sense that there's this kind of glass ceiling with Sherrod. Sherrod is perhaps weighing him down, but also providing that purpose, someone to look after, someone to care for. And it's nice that he is putting in the effort to go and try and enroll him into school. And, of course, laying on some maths lessons. The maths lessons are already being laid on here, despite the fact the school hasn't started. Yeah.
And it's nice that, we'll come to this in the school section, but it's nice that he bumps into Prez as well, these two people trying to impart maths lessons in very different environments.
Yeah, it's true, actually. The two mathematicians come together. And I don't know if he said... Is this the episode where he says, I'll keep it on the down low, and he assumes he's like undercover in the school?
No, that's later.
Because that's really good.
They merely exchange a glance in this episode, although it says a lot.
Yeah, because I don't think these guys will have met since season 1, when Prez had to give him a lift back early in season 1, so it would have been a bit of a, they must have been doing a little bit of, where do I recognise you from? I'm sure that must have been sort of...
Yeah, definitely a big double take for both of them.
Yeah. So.
Speaking of which, let's move on to the final strand, which is the school. So, tradie maths teacher Prez cleans up his classroom, removing the gum from the underside of the tables. Later, he meets with the other teachers to discuss maintaining consistent class rules. Prez asks if they can try to prevent the pupils from chewing gum, and the others recommend that he stick to simple rules that he can easily enforce. So just the first bit here, it starts with a nice little use of diegetic music, and continuing on the fact that Prez is clearly a fan of Johnny Cash, because he's obviously listening to Ring of Fire here, and denoting him getting closer and closer to this Ring of Fire that is his first class. But he was listening to Walk the Line, I think it was, in Season 2, when he's just doing some stuff on the port case. He's just kind of doing stuff on the board and whatnot. We have a little montage there, and he's listening to Walk the Line, so...
Yeah, no, definitely is a cool little scene.
It's also nice that Prez's value of a tidy workspace, and we've seen before that he really does try and maintain the board when he's with the detail, and he does like to have that order, is that continues on when he's a teacher, and he likes to have things clean and tidy, and he does kind of sort out the classroom properly beforehand. So just a nice little bit of his character coming through as he makes this transition. Yeah,
it's like kind of a therapeutic, almost symbolic thing for him, we imagine here, as he prepares the classroom.
This is his new board. I mean, we said before about the blackboard is his new detail board, you know.
Yeah.
He's kind of giving that treatment to the whole classroom.
Yeah, definitely. And in many ways, it's a naive move. You know, I don't imagine he'll be doing it again after it only takes one day for it to get messed up, I'm sure, back to its original state. But I can imagine, for the first time when you have those ideals about what you can achieve, I'm sure it would be a therapeutic sort of preparation device for starting off.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And I really there was a really cool transition as well, because this scene comes immediately after the battleships with Carcetti. And they immediately cut to a kind of battleship's grid board on the wall as it comes into the classroom.
Okay.
I'm always looking out for these interesting transitions. So Season 4 has lots of them, so I will try and point out as many as I can. But yeah.
Yeah, keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then we see the title of the episode coming through here, where he's in a little meeting with those other teachers. They're imparting a bit of advice to him about what you can actually expect, undermining some of that naivety that he might have had and still has. And we get what is at the time a very mysteriously delivered line from that other teacher who says that he needs soft eyes, and we don't actually find out until later on from Bunk with Greggs what that actually means. And obviously we'll discuss that a little bit more when we get to the title, but it's quite sort of ambiguously delivered here.
Yeah, it's really bizarre, isn't it? It's left standalone, no one really comments on it. It's sort of left as a weird riddle for us to solve going into the classroom. Yeah, I think it just kind of perhaps adds to this sense of impending doom for Prez. These teachers certainly aren't reassuring him in the slightest. They're really laying it on thick that you are kind of entering a war zone. It almost feels a little bit like a Western District briefing before their next rip and run. Yeah. It's like you're playing with the real deal here, and you need to be ready on your guard at all times. So I'm sure Prez must be really gearing himself up for this.
Yes, it's very much like a briefing, like you say.
Definitely. And also worth mentioning that this is, I think, the first time we see Grace outside of Cutty's story. Of course, Grace being Cutty's
That's right,
ex.
yeah. She obviously fancied the challenge of the inner city school.
Yeah, so she's moved from Ida Wells or something, I think, was in Season 3. Now she's at Edward Tillman. She's clearly one of the senior staff members at the school. Is she in maths as well? I'm not too sure. She might be head of English or something, but she seems to be one of the more senior members underneath Miss Donnelly. So,
yeah.
Yeah, so it's cool, all those connections there.
And then we have a little second section for the school strand. Slightly longer this time to take us to the end. We have Assistant Principal Donnelly being helped to prepare for the new term by one of her students, named Crystal. She tasks Crystal with delivering a box of second-hand school things to Dookie because she lives near him, advising her to give the clothes directly to Dookie and not any of the adults in the house. Bubbles and Sherrod arrive at the school offices, with Bubbles claiming to be the boy's uncle, to discuss possible enrolment for Sherrod. Donnelly asks for them to go into her office, and Bubbles recognises Prez, who happens to be present. Later, Crystal delivers the package to Dookie's home, and she is greeted by a dishevelled man who tries to take the box from her, but she waits until Dookie comes downstairs for it. So yeah, we had the little scene that we mentioned before where Bubbles turns up. They're just, like you say, just preparing. It's almost like they are preparing for war. It does feel like some kind of medical aid package or something like that. Yeah. To the soldier at the front, it does kind of feel a little bit like that. Has that feel to it. So yeah, we get the little scene with Bubbles and Sherrod. As we've mentioned, Bubbles putting on a bit of the act to be the nice clean uncle doing the right thing for his nephew, and the double take with Prez. But I think perhaps the real standout thing here is the small snapshot that we get with Dookie. and we see just how, in a very small snapshot, just how awful his home life must be if these people are supposed to be his parents.
Yeah. No, it's very, very sad what we see here. And
it shows how much Donnelly clearly knows about the kids as well. And Dookie is built up as a somewhat notorious figure, but not quite in the same way as one might normally expect on the street.
No, he's just notoriously unfortunate. Certainly feels like he has distanced himself from the hell of his parents' lives. When he sort of comes out the window at the top, there is a certain sense of joy in his voice, which you certainly don't get with the father, we assume, downstairs, who is, off his rocks, he's barely aware of where he is seeing those clothes as potential drug money, we assume.
It's just something to sell off.
Yeah. So, wow, they're certainly laying on the tragedy thick.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about the school for this week?
No, I mean, there's not been a lot to say about the school for the past couple of weeks. It's probably the biggest institution of this season. It's the main one. Next week...
Still in the build-up,
yeah,
there.
Next week, obviously, the school term starts, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more to dive into.
That's right. And that's our recap. That's the episode.
Okay.
So covering a lot of ground there as quickly as we can.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at our final sections.
Tommy, focus.
He comes at me with race and some bullshit crime stats. I ignore the race thing and counter by noting that homicides are up 15%, even though other violent crime stats are down 12%. I point out this does not make sense unless Royce is cooking the crime stats, making robberies, rapes, and assaults disappear. I suggest the mayor is not telling the truth about crime in the city. I conclude by declaring that it is for all of Baltimore, every neighborhood, that I'm making public safety the cornerstone of my campaign. Tomorrow night, I will kick his ass. But the next morning, I still wake up white in a city that ain't.
Now, normally we would... we have been doing this sort of favourite characters thing, but we've already decided that it's somewhat redundant. I was trying to think of a way to make this little bit before we do our favourite scenes, which is slightly more doable. I was trying to think of a way to improve this, but I haven't really come up with anything. So...
Well, I was thinking, obviously it's hard to think of just good characters. Well, it's easy. It's very easy. It's too easy. You can think of everyone. So this week I kind of thought of characters who we saw new sides to. And we saw new sides to a lot of characters, actually. Obviously, let's just mention Clay to start with. He unleashes his catchphrase. But obviously, Royce goes through some hardships this episode. We sense that whilst he has other stresses on, most of his actual thought is going into this awful event with Herc, where he was overseen, and whether or not he's going to get snitched on. Valchek also reveals some new colours as he comes back into the fold with both Carcetti and Herc, and benefits both of them. Daniels as well, laughing and being a little bit entertaining and a bit supportive towards Perlman. Freamon being extra sort of selfless and just going extra McNulty and sending out the subpoenas. Weebay as well. Weebay really did show us a new side, showed us some more of his background, what he's been sort of living with, his family, his son. And I guess it's also worth mentioning Bubbles, who's one character who doesn't do a lot for me this season, although can't say the same for season 5. So I sort of came up with those guys, just new sides, new aspects to them.
Yeah, all great points there, definitely. But these new sides, especially, like you say, with Weebay, a character who really only had impact in Season 1, they do keep him going because he is an intriguing character, and it's nice to be demonstrated a bit more of that here. I was also going to mention that we learn a little bit more about the kids here. We learn more about Naaman. We see more about his home life. We see his relationship that he has with his mother and father. We understand a little bit more about why he acts the way that he does and why he comes to expect these things and doesn't have the same work attitude as the other kids. We learn more about Michael and the fact that he's more content to go it alone and doesn't want to accept that same level of charity. has a very strong maturity about him. And we learn, again, that tiny little snapshot about Dookie at the end and what his home life must be like, even though it is only a little tease, really.
Yeah.
Randy, on the other hand, we kind of see a misfortune from him, but we don't really learn anything new about his character on the whole.
No, certainly. He certainly
his
sits
time
on the
will come.
sidelines. Yeah. No McNulty for the first time ever. I didn't
Omar.
Yep, that's true. Omar's not arrived yet. I mean, Omar obviously has been absent before. This is the first time McNulty's ever missed an episode of the show.
Yeah, it's certainly an exception for McNulty.
Yeah, not that I noticed, of course. I mean, the show is so dense at this point that you really do have to think about it to notice it, which is odd because you know in most shows you would really miss the presence of a main character. And yeah, as you mentioned, both Colvin and Omar are yet to appear, despite being very, very big characters on the show. And again, we don't notice them not being there. The show currently has enough going on that we're not even thinking about who's missing. So,
It's got so many options.
yeah,
It's just got such a large pool to draw from. So, like you say, when people are missing, they may be missing, but they're not being missed. Really,
they're not missed. Yeah, definitely.
Although it's obviously always nice to have these characters on, that it's not a necessity to have them all the time, and we can discover other sections in greater detail because of it, rather than having to just cram everything in for the sake of it.
Yeah, definitely.
What about any particular scenes standing out for you this week?
Yeah, I like the debate. I like the way it tied everything up at the end. Felt very neat. Felt very meaningful as well, with particularly with Naymond turning off and Cutty perhaps being a bit more interested, but isn't able to vote. So there's always some sort of frustrating element to everything. Michael and the $200 really stands out as a very memorable scene, and the way Marlo sizes him up after he refuses, as you know, seeing him as a soldier and as a very much a man that they'd be interested in hiring. Quite enjoy the bizarreness of the opener. Certainly a bit off the wall, a bit unusual. Funny to see Herc in that situation. Cutty and the women, good scenes. Sorry, there's just everything, isn't it, really? Every scene in the show. Slowly learning more about the boys, most notably Naymond, whose home life and parents are fascinating discoveries, particularly seeing that Weebay is involved with that life. First time round, that was a real shock. So,
yeah, I really liked the bit where we have them on the stoop. We have the kids on the stoop and they're talking about school, and that kind of later on we have the scenes with them in the stolen car with Donut, and then again later on where Carver turns up. I really do like these scenes with the kids that feel a bit more ad-libbed. They're just really naturally performed, and they're really endearing scenes, and yeah, it's just nice to see that innocence. I guess I'm trying to sort of enjoy it whilst it lasts, because it isn't going to last.
yeah,
Once school starts, that begins to disappear pretty quickly. So I'm trying to enjoy the summer as much as they are, really.
no, definitely.
And it's particularly nice just because we're learning a bit more about the characters, and I particularly like the scene with Carver and seeing what he's learnt from Colvin and imparting that and delivering a very different kind of speech that he might have done before, just harkening back to him standing on top of that car and yelling that, you don't get to win, we get to win, sort of this being part of this childish game. Instead, now he's finally being the adult, he's finally being the one to present this to them. And I like the shot of him when he's walking away with the kids silhouetted and the sort of ruined warehouse industrial buildings in the background. I really like that shot of him walking away.
No, definitely. Yeah.
And I also really enjoyed the debate as well. I kind of agree with much of what you said there. Just that the debate tied everything together really nicely, and was nice to see Royce more publicly on the back foot, and Carcetti having a little bit more success and actually really starting to feel like the potential mayor rather than the candidate. And we're talking about him making that progress in season 3, and now he's taking full advantage of that, along with all of the people that he's got behind him giving him good advice, and he's putting in the time and effort to get there. So it does feel somewhat contrary to what he's been saying about the fact that there's no way that he can win, but he's putting the effort in, so he must still believe that there's a chance.
Oh yeah, yeah. From this point onwards, it feels like every week there is certainly more hope for him, and doesn't stop the actual episode, the 6th episode, with the election being very tense. Though that there is never that set in stone moment where he's going to win. But
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, does a great job of building it up and keeping you guessing.
yeah, definitely. So really, really good segment of the show. This, I think that the first half of season 4 with the politics is some of the best stuff in the entire show. And yeah, the debate is a great part of that.
Now let's take a look at the title, Soft Eyes, spoken by, I can't remember the name of the teacher now, but spoken by one of the teachers in the little meeting that Prez has. We come to learn later on from Bunk when he's talking to Greggs that this is about kind of seeing the wider picture, I suppose.
Yeah.
Being able to look past what is immediately obvious, which is a sort of investigation technique, but it can be used also here and is applicable to the teachers as they look past what these kids may appear to be. They may appear to be unruly or, products of a street that glorifies all of this materialism and violence and whatnot and drug culture. But in reality, they're still kids. They've come from hard backgrounds, and you need to learn how to empathize properly. They talk about keeping them distracted. So it's more than what it initially appears. And they hammer that home as well by making it clear that going full on discipline and putting all of these rules in place is not the way to go. That's not going to work. Yeah,
very nice interpretation of that, actually, yeah. From what I remember, when Bunk fully describes Soft Eyes, he kind of likens it to the phrase, see the forest through, is it see the trees through the forest, or, seeing the tree and missing the forest. I think that's more what he means by it. And, it's being able to step back and understand the longer term, perhaps a more holistic view of the class, rather than just seeing all the despair and the pain and the bad behaviour, and seeing the potential in the kids as well.
Although Bunk does impart that advice to Greggs in a rather humorous way by setting up all of these like silly clues and whatnot that she ends up finding. So
is it Nate?
Still finds a way to make it funny.
Yeah, Nate got me, I think, or something like that, isn't it? It's like hilarious.
Yeah, Tater shot me or something like that. Yeah.
Oh dear. Oh gosh.
So yeah, it comes across very ambiguous in this episode. Then, from kind of certainly from a first-time viewer perspective, you're not really, you feel as bamboozled as Prez by this stage.
Yeah.
But it becomes clearer later on in Refugees. Is it?
I think that may well be it. Yeah, definitely.
So yeah,
not long to wait. A couple episodes. Yeah, and then of course, slightly more relevant and specific epigraph. Is it I still wake up white in a city that ain't, or white?
That's right, from Carcetti.
White, as Carcetti calls it.
White.
Yeah. Yeah, so a good line. As we said, better to be lucky than to be good, perhaps would have been a better one for me. But certainly a good line. There's no secret as to what that means. Carcetti's clearly a fairly arrogant and very self-assured man about his ability to win the election based on his superiority over Royce and Tony Gray, but he is worried very much about the whole racial angle. And in Baltimore, where the population is 65% black, at least during this time, he's worried whether whatever he does, whether that can overcome that hurdle for him. So he's putting that in a very sort of succinct way.
That's right. Yeah, it's a bit more on the nose, this one. It's kind of interesting that it feels like he's giving a speech in this meeting that he's having about the speech that he should be giving. He's kind of delivering a bit of a speech to Norman and Terry.
Yeah,
I will kick his ass. It kind of does. It does delivers it in that way. So it feels a bit meta, perhaps. But other than that, there's not really loads that can be said because it's not exactly filled with strong subtleties. It's very much just obvious his worry about race and how that's such a major factor in the election.
I think in many ways that's what perhaps drives him that bit harder, to work that bit harder than Royce does, and does take the election, because we see a very similar scene early on. I don't think we mentioned it actually in the recap, but where Royce is being driven in the car and Herc's in the front, having just seen him get blown by his secretary, and he's sort of ranting about how Carcetti's completely off the wall. He's never gonna, come and take on this incumbent mayor, and there's the same level of arrogance being exhibited on the other side as well.
Yeah.
But obviously it's not tempered by this fear over the racial element, and that's perhaps what really drives Carcetti to do all that he can to sort of secure his position.
And of course everyone loves a good underdog.
Yeah.
And Carcetti is certainly that.
Yeah, he certainly brings it home in that, and becomes a very, very likeable character from this point. Alrighty. So that's
anything else that you want to add?
No, I think we must have discussed everything there. Really, yep. Covered the show in great detail. Good episode. I like it. Covers a lot of homicide stuff which we haven't seen in a long time. A lot of Bunk and Norris stuff, which is good.
Another really, really strong episode.
Yeah.
Just following on brilliantly from the first week.
Yeah, I mean,
so
definitely not quite as strong as
it's,
last week's, but all the episodes in season 4 are fantastic, and really looking forward to the next one where school starts in homerooms. So
that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks very much for joining us again. Thanks for all your correspondence. Feel free to drop us an email about any thoughts you have about this episode or any of the others. And send us an email, caughtonthewire@gmail.com. There's a contact form on the website where you can also download all of the other episodes. It should be mentioned as well at this stage that when this episode goes up, you may have already noticed that all of the other episodes from Season 3 will be gone, but they are still available. They're just all on the website. You can download them from caughtonthewire.wordpress.com, and there's a link to the YouTube on the podcast page where all of the episodes are available there as well. So fear not, they have not completely disappeared. They're still available for those of you that aren't aware. But thanks again for joining us. We shall see you next week for Episode 3, Homerooms. Until then, take care.